So I guess I'll call the meeting to order. So this is a joint committee meeting, Committee on Economic Development and Planning and Committee on Public Works. Myself, Councilor Petrelli and Councilor Feltner are Economic Development and Planning, and Councilors Donato, Petrelli, and Palumba are Public Works. We are meeting tonight to do a follow-up on the parking management plan, which contained 10 recommendations on that topic. We got through the initial first 4 at our prior meeting. The last meeting that we had was actually the night of that pretty intense storm. The entire West Watertown lost power that night for 5 hours. So it made for a pretty spotty meeting. Skies look clear for tonight, so hoping we won't have that problem. So that's some very basic background, but I know everyone from last meeting to now is familiar with the basics of the recommendations we already made. So if it's okay with everyone, we can proceed in the same fashion where we can take on recommendations 5 through 10. And we can do that by having Laura talk about the recommendation, and then we can open up discussion and either make a recommendation or not to the full council. So if that's okay, without further ado, I'll kick things over to Laura, who can start with number 5.
Okay, thank you, Ken. First, I just want to mention that we had a traffic commission meeting today that Steve and I both attended, Steve being a voting member, and I presented the changes to the meter rates, removing time limits, and also changing the hours of operations. They did vote to change the meter rate to $1 an hour in most locations. The Wells Avenue lot and the Nichols Avenue diagonal parking not. Those will remain at 50 cents. Removing all time limits and changing the hours of operations from currently 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. This isn't exactly what we had, what you guys had voted at the last meeting. Sergeant Sampson in particular didn't want to remove it completely from the traffic rules and ordinances. He felt that, and he did prove himself to be right about this, that it's actually very easy to change the rates, and that right now the town manager changes the rates, changes everything in the TRO with just the recommendation of the traffic commission, and that is probably the procedure we would go through anyway to change the rates. And I think it was just easier from his perspective to not take it out completely, but just vote to change the rates. So that's what we ended up doing. And then the time limits, I didn't have it written down that you had voted on the 4-hour the 4-hour limit on the street, and so we presented it to them as we had presented it to you, and just saw the minutes. So we talked about, they want to come back and look at everything at least 1 year from now, to look at how it's going, what impact the parking rates and the time limits are having. So I think the gist of the discussion was that everything can be adjusted pretty easily. So that's where that stands right now. The hours of operation, they had no problem changing it to from 8 to 8. Should I go on?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, did anyone want to have any questions on that particular piece? Councilor Feltner.
Hi, sorry, I didn't quite understand what you said. Are you saying that Sergeant Sampson or the Traffic Commission didn't feel totally comfortable in removing the rates from the traffic orders and regulations, or?
Yeah, I think that's
the rate. Oh. And my memory was that we hadn't really specifically said, yes, as a committee, we wanted to remove all time limit restrictions. You know how we had gone back and forth depending on the area, like you said, 4 hours in some places, but you presented removing all of them to the Traffic Commission and they said whatever, or I didn't quite get that.
I want to just, acknowledge that it was a mistake on our part. I didn't have it in my notes that you had requested the 4-hour limit on the street and then today we got the notes from Councilor Picciarelli and saw that, but we had already, the traffic commission meeting had already occurred. So,
Okay, so, but it seems like they're fine with it either way,
well,
even though you,
go ahead.
I think there's some flexibility there. I think one of the reasons that maybe Laura and I hadn't recalled that was the decision of the subcommittee was because we really did see that as something that we needed to try and evaluate, that there really is pros and cons to having a limitation and not having a limitation. So as it stands now, what the Traffic Commission decision was to have no limitation. We can certainly easily go back and adjust that and add a 4-hour limitation on the street. I don't think that that's a difficult thing to do if people feel strongly about that. On the other hand, we could go forward with what the Traffic Commission recommended and evaluate it and see how that works. And 2-3 months from now, we could revisit it.
The only thing I'd caution is
council's going to vote on this, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. I'll say the only thing I caution is that the full council hasn't weighed in yet, so
yeah.
it's not like anything from this joint committee is binding. So
And
until
just
that,
another question: was our
Yeah.
town engineer present at the traffic commission meeting?
No.
So it was there a DPW rep there?
No.
Okay, thank you.
so without any other questions or comments on that piece, I think we can probably jump on to number 5.
Okay, I just want to write this down.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Okay. So number 5 is to invest in infrastructure upgrades to municipal parking lots. And I'm going to kind of combine that one with number 9, which is reduce parking demand by enhancing access for non-vehicle modes. The goal of that one in particular, really both, is to decrease the demand for parking by making it more attractive to walk, bike, and take transit. MassDOT recently launched a program called Shared Streets, Shared Spaces to fund quick build changes to improve sidewalks, streets, on-street parking lots, and on-street parking and off-street parking lots in support of public health, safe mobility, and renewed commerce. These improvements could be temporary or pilots for potentially permanent changes. DPCD and Public Works together applied for funding to do a temporary shared use path from Saltonstall Park to Church Street behind the library and crossing both Sunny Hooley Way and Church Street with new crosswalks and handicapped ramps. This would be a pilot project using mostly paint and temporary barriers to test changes before creating a more permanent plan for a shared use path through Watertown Square all the way to Mount Auburn Street. We just heard that we received $85,000 from MassDOT for this temporary pilot program. When built, it will provide a safer way to walk or bike through this segment of Watertown Square and will inform our future plans for the community path. It also includes bike racks and benches to enhance the pedestrian and bicycle riding experience.
Okay, Laura, just one question from the notes. That's from where to where?
From Saltonstall Park to Church Street, across Church Street.
Okay. Laura, is there anything else before I start opening up for comments and questions?
No, that's
Okay.
a major thing we've done on that one.
Okay. Councilor Feltner?
Yeah, so great news, very exciting about shared path. Did I hear you say no handicap ramps initially, and then
Yes, there will be
a
handicap.
little like bike racks and benches? I'm wondering about the cost of pilot versus what we end up using. You give any ideas of how that works, or if that's been done elsewhere already, or?
The cost? I didn't
Well,
understand.
you said
So-
include bikes and benches, but I don't know what that might be.
That's in
Those
the,
would, yeah, those would be permanent. Those wouldn't go away.
oh, yeah, yeah, right.
And we would hope that they would stay in place and be useful for quite some time. And it does include handicap ramps, anywhere where there's a crossing. The state required that it be, meet all the design requirements. So it is ADA accessible. We'll have ramps. It's just that it's being done more with things like asphalt as opposed to concrete.
Oh, okay.
So in that sense, it's not as permanent. And if it works, then we'll, move forward with some of the capital project items that the council has put in for the community path and solve some of those other problems and making the connections.
I think Councilor Palumbo had a question.
Yes, that's great. Congratulations on the award. I know that I'm just not sure how, are we looking at number 5?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure how what we just spoke to is directly related to number 5. So maybe I'm missing it, but
Tony, it's not. It's actually number 9. So we jumped ahead.
It combined because it is taking place in the municipal parking lot. It's not the one that's directly behind CVS and where Tresca's is, but starting at Salt and Soul, so going behind the library, behind Town Hall, behind the library, really behind the old police station, and then through where the fire department parking is there. So it is in the municipal parking area.
And it's provided.
in what parking area particularly? Now, are we talking about the library parking? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
As well as the fire department parking between Sunny Woolly Way and Church Street. So it will involve some reconfiguration of that. We've met with the library and we've met with the police chief the fire chief and talked about both of these, and police as well, and DPW to coordinate, all those changes.
But you're talking about a path, multi-use path, not, I'm wondering if Tony's wondering about number 5, where you're actually upgrading the parking lot.
Well, that included pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. So while it's not a holistic improvement of a parking lot, it is an enhancement to the parking lot for one segment of the population.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. You're not talking about the whole lot, but
No,
okay.
correct.
So this is really sort of so Laura, you were reading from something. It'd be great if you could just email that to me so I could put it to the minutes. Put it in the minutes rather than trying to recreate it from scratch. So really, number 5, talked about upgrading the parking lot. We talked about redoing the municipal parking lot, but part of that was also tied into the community path, which would change the reorientation of the parking lot. And that sort of ties into number 9, which was making access for non-vehicle use of the parking lot. So they are both together. Right now, the redesign upgrade of the Watertown Square municipal lot, which is euphemistically called the CVS lot, that would be, we had anticipated, redoing that parking lot also. But this grant is just sort of a separate thing. But there's a lot of work that still needs to be done because we want to get the community path all the way to Arsenal Street, which means it has to go through the so-called CVS lot. So that's and that's on our radar screen. That's already an ongoing project that we haven't actually started designing. So this is good news with that grant. We can at least get started and start showing some action through the library lot to Church Street. And then we still have to address the issue. And I know.
Tony has his hand up.
Sorry, Vinny, was that it?
Yeah,
Then
that's it for
Councilor
now.
Palumbo.
But go ahead.
Okay, Councilor Palumbo.
So, thank you. So I appreciate the explanation. It just seems to me that if we're looking at all of the points in number 5, we're talking about lots that are not well lit. We're talking about Wells Avenue lot is difficult to access due to one-way streets. What else besides what we just spoke about is being addressed in number 5?
I would say that we have not gotten to addressing the rest of number 5 yet. So,
Okay,
today we're talking about, the things that we're ready to move forward on, and we wanted to bring you the exciting news that we did have this little piece of it, but you're right. Number 5 does talk about a lot of other things that no, we haven't made progress on, and probably would make much more progress when we move forward with the design of the community path and really redesign that lot. One other small piece on that is part of the reason we kind of associated it too is because we did try to find a way to get the MassDOT grant to go through the Watertown Square lot, but that was, shall we say, a bridge too far. It was too complicated and wasn't going to work. So that wasn't going to work. So we scaled it back to end at Church Street. And so that's what we have to bring you tonight. And we'll continue to work on implementing other aspects of number 5.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I would just add also that the Wells Avenue, changing the directionality, I think we've dropped that. Just working with Matt on it, and I know Councilor Canales had a lot of issues with that I don't think we're pursuing that.
You're not pursuing what on Wells
Changing
parking?
the directionality of Wells Avenue.
Oh,
Should I get closer? I'm sorry. This computer doesn't have as good a microphone as mine.
yeah, it's a little muffled.
Sorry. Yeah, I think we're not pursuing that right now.
So number 5, right, so in the memo, number 5 makes no mention of the changing the direction of the Wells Avenue. So that was not part of staff's recommendation.
Correct.
Correct.
So,
Police also were not in favor of that.
So you're not in favor of that, correct? So, in terms of, so what, as you can see from what we've been, I don't know if Councilor Canales, did you have your hand up? Did you want to
Yeah,
say?
Councilor Canales just
Yeah.
raised your hand to comment on that.
I did. Thank you. I understand that there was no mention of it in the memo that was sent out, that actually what we're reading from, but it is mentioned in the recommendations, number 5, being action items. Consider changing the directionality of Wells Avenue to allow for easier access to the municipal lot. So yes, it is referenced in and I think it's the final report, the parking management plan dated July 2019.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask that the chairs of the committees include my documentation in the minutes of this meeting. There were 2 items, namely Wells Avenue, and I have addressed all of the points, and the second item being improvement of lighting. And I think we also need to all be aware that in the Wells Avenue municipal lot, as we refer to it, the lighting is privately owned. And this was something that was brought to our attention in 2018. And I've included the documentation, the conversation going back and forth between myself and the property owner, Mr. Robert Korf. So it's my understanding that the lights are currently on during the overnight hours, but if in fact there were to be any changes, would have to be negotiated with the property owner at present. So we don't know the status of any future property transactions. Thank you.
Good to know. And we'll make sure that anything that you would like to be included is part of the minutes.
It was the document that I sent out actually September the 27th at 7:57 p.m. There are a number of emails within that transmittal.
Right, so I'll make sure that that comment gets included in that attachment. So I think, if going back to the memo of March 6th, what we've been doing, with all the other recommendations is, I guess we'd look for a motion to endorse the recommendations presented by staff for item 5, with the understanding that the plan for changing the direction of Wells Avenue has been dropped.
I-
So that would be, I think that would be the motion.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions before? I guess let's get that motion on the floor and then we'll go questions.
So who wants to make a motion?
I'll make
So
the
moved.
motion. Perfect. Second. And then so open it up. Any comments or questions before we vote on that motion? Councilor Palumba.
So I understand that all the points, I'm looking at the actual plan, and maybe I'm not looking at the right document unless I missed something in my emails.
So what we're voting on, what we're working off is so there was a parking study and then
I'm
there's the
looking.
implementation plan. So we're working off the implementation plan, the memo of March 6th. So that had, which is a little bit different than what was in the study, because some of the stuff is, the staff has made, like this Wells Avenue, for example, in the implementation plan, there's no intention of proceeding with the recommendation in the study to reverse the direction of Wells Avenue. So I think that's the so that's the difference. So we're working off the implementation plan. So
Okay.
so again, the implementation plan makes no mention of reversing that, but I think our motion wants to be clear that it specifically excludes that.
Councilor Feltner.
Yeah, no, it just seems a little strange because 5 isn't done yet, and Steve said there's more to do in number 5 in terms of parking lots. I have nothing against, obviously, what we've talked about that we can see on our radar and that we're excited about, kind of for non-vehicles. I don't know, maybe you can explain a little better why we would vote on number 5 as a whole implementation when we don't have all the pieces yet.
Sure.
Anyway.
Well, I wasn't, at least I'm not viewing this as a be all end all that, this set of actions is the end of discussing implementation of the parking management plan. I think because the council had asked us to come forward with a plan on implementation, and we're doing that, we're trying to bring forward the things that are ready for, for discussion and action. And we'll follow that up, in the future with additional things. As we said, in the capital program, there's, design money for a community path that would redesign the Watertown Square parking lot. Obviously, when we do that, that'll have major impacts on number 5. Excuse me, but we're not quite there yet.
But that is the first sentence of recommendation 5. Right?
So we're just
Yeah.
seeing this more as a living document that will, the implementation. I mean, I'm just thinking because when the council votes, it's somehow maybe should be a little more clear to the public.
Well, it's pretty clear that redesign and upgrade of the Watertown Square municipal parking lot should happen at the same time as the design and building of the community path through Watertown Square. The redesign includes.
Well, but we're not going all the way to the square.
No.
Yes, it is.
That's how I see this. That is very much on my to-do list, is to start the process of redesigning Watertown Square.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
through the square, which basically is up to, it gets us to Mount Auburn Street. So.
Yeah. So Steve, is it safe to say, like in summary, that a yes vote to this motion would be to move forward as described with the improvements to the community path in the area, but the other bigger pieces and the fuller redesign, things like the lighting and the parking itself, those would be things you would be bringing back to the committee when they're further. Okay.
Yep, when they're ready. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So we have a motion in a second. I guess I'll just do the roll call as it appears on my screen. Councilor Donato.
Yes.
Councilor Feltner.
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli.
Yes.
Councilor Palumba.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Could I also get a motion then on recommendation 9?
Or do you want to wait till just we get to 9? Or
Well, I guess,
we could do 9 right now.
yeah,
So-
because we consider them together, might as well.
So recommendation 9 is reduce overall parking demand by enhancing access for non-vehicle modes. The redesign of Watertown Square municipal lot will include bike parking, walking paths between parking spaces and businesses, promoting walking, biking, and transit brings customers to the square who don't need parking spaces.
Okay.
But
If I could, if I could get someone to make that motion, and hopefully we get a second, and then Councilor Canellis, I'll come over to you once it's on the floor.
So the motion would be that the committee endorses the recommendation of number 9.
Will someone make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second. So we have a motion, a second. Councilor Canellis.
Thank you. Just for clarification on Wells Avenue, was there a motion taken to exclude it, or is that?
Yes,
Yes, yes.
that was part of the motion.
As proposed, specifically excluding the reversing of the Wells Avenue direction.
Great, thank you.
Are there any questions on number 9? Yes, Councilor Feltner.
So I guess just a little clarity. So, I mean, we have our recommendations, but we're now talking about implementation. So I don't have any, you know, nays in my mind about the recommendations, but we're talking about implementation. So again, we're just saying for now, we are happy that we have this grant and this path is going in, and we're combining 5 and 9, and we're going to come back and revisit.
And
Yeah.
we're going to work on a plan to redesign the entire parking lot.
Yeah, at least I think if we just explain,
You
so
know,
there was the study.
Worded, so.
Yeah, there's sort of the study, and then the memo from March 6th is sort of the implementation plan about what the staff is going to do to, which bits and pieces of the study they're going to do to implement. Then each of those implementation points are going to be specific projects, which are either going to go to Public Works Committee, or they're going to go to Economic Development Planning, and look at the specific projects that are going to be contained there. But each of these things, like redesigning the Watertown Square Municipal Parking Lot, well, that's going to be a big capital project that's going to require designs, and we're going to review it in the Public Works Committee and hire a contract. We got $3 million budgeted to do that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, so the first step is, yes, go ahead, staff, go ahead and start the process of these projects. And then we're still going to have to weigh in on each project about what they're going to be. So it's more sort of the 3-step. We did the study. Now we're sort of agreeing what the implementation plan is. And then we'll go ahead and build all those things into the capital improvement program. Or other places it could be too, like these grants.
Yeah, if I could offer just one other clarification. Now, it was clear that we had some capital money for signal or for meter heads, and we wanted to go forward and purchase those. And I think very rightly so, the council said, well, you know, we want a plan for implementing the whole study, not just, you know, one thing. So we came forward with the things that we thought we could, you know, put before you now that we're implementing and can get done. Not that that's the be-all, end-all implementation of the parking study. So, I think it's fair to put it in that categorization of these are the things we're ready to move forward with now.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll do the same order I think as last time. Councilor Donato,
Yes.
Councilor Feltner,
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli,
Yes.
Councilor Palumba,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, so with those two addressed, I think Laura, if it's okay, we'll move on to number 6.
Okay, so number 6 is improved wayfinding signage, which we did talk about at the last meeting, because wayfinding signage is in 2 places. You know, there's a little overlap here. So I'll just give you the update after our discussion, where you had said, you know, indicated that you wanted to weigh in on the design and of those signs, that where the designer, should I take a step back? And we got a grant from DHCD, which provided for us a designer who specializes in wayfinding signs. We did not pick the designer, DHCD picked the designer. And he is now, after a couple of meetings with a small committee, generating ideas, he's now working on a number of different designs, which he will present first to the staff, to the small committee, and then at a public meeting. So after the last meeting, we discussed what was the best way to open it up to the council and the community. So it's fair to say, I think in November, there will be a public meeting on showing a variety of designs.
Great.
So,
And-
I just want to say, so, this was part of, we discussed this as item number 4 the last time. And, the recommendation for number 6 is basically says see number 4 because it all got rolled in together. So I believe the committee can agree to take no action on this because it's already been rolled up into number 4, which we've already voted on. Is that a fair assessment for committee members?
Yeah, I think so. Are there any other questions or comments though before we move on? Councilor Feltner?
Yeah, so again, really cool. Thanks, Laura. I'm hoping we could do something cool that's unique for Watertown, whether it in talking maybe to Disability Commission or, if there was Braille on the sign. So just toss that out there before you present in November. But it's very exciting. Thank you.
Okay.
Good. Excellent. So that's number 6,
Nice.
which now
Okay.
brings us to number 7.
Okay, number 7.
Which is shared parking.
Work with owners of privately owned off-street lots. This will definitely be part of our effort when we redesign the Watertown Square Municipal Lot and extend the community path. We have not done this yet.
So do we want to so the recommendation here is that the staff, the department would be contacting private parking lot owners to see who's interested, to see if we could develop a plan.
Yeah.
And we've not done that yet. So this is one that would recommend for the staff still to pursue.
Okay. So, and there could be, some tremendous opportunities with new owners, like that big parking garage that was just sold in Coolidge Square. If they could be persuaded to, rent winter parking to residents, that kind of thing, I think it's the sort of we think about needing to go. It could. So anyway, a lot of good stuff there. So I guess the motion would be to endorse the recommendation for number 7 that was provided by staff.
Are there any questions or comments before we make that motion? Councilor Feltner?
Again, of course I'd support this. I'm just really curious. I mean, this has come up so much, including with developments, and we just heard with the marijuana at North Beacon. I'm just wondering about the timing. It seems like it's a fraught issue given liability insurance. If you just share any thoughts on how long you might be willing to pursue this, or it sounds like nothing's been done yet to date, but given that we're trying to be hopeful in our public spaces being more shared in different modes, if you will, that it seems like it is an important issue to maximize the use of the existing parking. So that's just what's on my mind about this.
Sure. And I guess I would offer, that one of the issues we have is pushing developers to minimize parking. So there's not a lot of excess parking. But that also kind of conflicts with the idea of, and now that you have parking, let's share it with everyone else. So it does, provide some conflicts. But having said that, I think there's a couple things. One, particularly some of the older buildings like Councilor Picciarelli just mentioned, they do have pretty extensive parking that is more than they need today. And so I do think that represents an opportunity and one we'll certainly continue to pursue. I think I would agree with Councilor Feltner that this is, an important topic and something that we ought to pursue. It's just hasn't gotten to the top of the list yet, and so we haven't really done a lot of work on it. But we certainly will.
I mean, and it's one of the things that we're thinking that the weekend, like even if we start small, if there are weekend opportunities or
Evening. That's what I'm.
okay.
even if we could put some meters into one of the lots and they could charge after 5 and expand the parking for the restaurants. But, you know, the problem is that, first of all, sometimes it's hard to even find the owners and the decision makers because that's not, you know, in Watertown Square every day, but also that they don't really have much incentive to change it. They're pretty happy.
That's one of the things on my mind.
That'll be a good challenge for me.
So if I could just add, back in August of 2016, this was a referral to study this matter. Steve, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And we talked about it, and you know, some of the challenges of getting the owners to actually sort of agree to a license agreement, because there would need to be a license agreement of some sort that would limit liability and allow this to happen. At that time, nobody was really interested in it, but I think in the current climate that we are in today, where there's a lot more desire to do something like this, it's a very expensive, you know, building up parking garage is expensive, and you know, if there's a revenue opportunity, you know, if the owner can make a little money and we can get cars off the streets and relieve some of the parking, particularly in the East End neighborhood, you know. And Angie, by the way, just sent me a text message. Her computer just unexpectedly shut down. So, so she's connecting again. So, I think it's worth going back again, because I think it could really do some benefit. And I think having it as a recommendation in the parking study, and then, you know, recommendation from the council gives a little bit of extra oomph behind it.
Yep. Yep.
Councilor Palumbo?
Do you think it would be okay if we just amended number 17 to broaden it a little bit beyond this should happen in the last sentence? It says this should happen in conjunction with the community path. Is it possible to broaden this so that we're not dealing just with one parking lot?
Well, I'll just offer that in my mind, it wasn't just that one parking lot. That when we talked about that, I think there's a number of places throughout town where we would look to do that. So,
Okay.
So no problem with adding that
Fine.
language.
I got it. Yep, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
My bad.
Okay, Angie, glad to see you're back. We're just on number 7, talking about potential shared parking. So I don't know if you had any questions about that.
Well, I'm sorry, I apologize. The computer just logged off. Can you just bring me up to speed about conversation about the Wells Avenue lot and any other properties that you've discussed?
Related to this, there's no like specific pieces that lots that we've talked about.
Okay.
I don't have any update for Wells Avenue lot and that, you know, property ownership there. Haven't been any conversations. I think he's been a little busy in Newton lately and hasn't really think too much about Coolidge Square. Some of the other things, Councilor Picciarelli mentioned the Tufts building, and, you know, with its sale and significant parking there, is there some opportunities there that we should look at? And we'll certainly have those conversations. We didn't really discuss any other specific lots.
Well, if I may, if we go back to the conditioning, when Prospectus purchased the now Tufts property, there was a condition in there that there would be no leasing of parking to outside entities because there was a concern that parking would not be adequate. And even with the construction of the garage, neighborhood parking, you know, the area has been infiltrated with folks from the property because whether they have adequate parking or not, I mean, employees just prefer to park in the area. So that is a concern.
I do have a question. Steve, am I right in thinking that the overall purpose of looking into the shared parking is that we have areas in town where folks will congregate because they're shopping or there's a park or something of that nature, and it's advantageous for us to offer public parking next to those amenities?
Yes, although I'd say it's as much that as it is recognizing that there are significant, if you think of parking as a commodity, there's a significant amount of parking that's privately owned that's not fully utilized. And if we can find opportunities to more fully utilize it, either by having people use it when the property owner is not using it, or finding ways to use spaces at the same time to make it more efficient, then I think we'd look at those as well. But you're right, it certainly as well to support some of the public amenities in town and making opportunities available for people to park, to utilize those.
Yeah, I only ask half being cheeky about it. All right, so I think we've had some good conversation on this. Sorry, Councilor Canales, before we make the motion.
Thank you. I think that property owners have to speak for themselves, but I can tell you that the properties in the area of Wells Avenue, even though they might seem to be underutilized at one specific point in time, are utilized sporadically. And I think to open it up to the general public sometimes makes it a little bit difficult, especially when we're dealing with funerals and other functions that are not on a regular basis. And I know that the other churches in the area also use the Bigelow Avenue parking lot that belongs to the Orthodox Church for funerals and other functions. There's an overflow and they do ask permission, and that does occur. But, if they were going to be approached, they'd have to speak on their own behalf.
Councilor Picciarelli, do you mind making the motion?
So that would be the motion to recommend endorsing the staff recommendation for number 7.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So we'll do the roll call. Councilor Donato.
Yes.
Councilor Feltner.
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli.
Yes.
Councilor Palumba.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay. Moving on to number 8.
Right. Redirect employee parking demand. Again, the point of this is you have people parking who are there for all day, and you want them to park in remote locations because they're not coming and going all day to their cars, whereas the customers want to be as close to the storefronts as they possibly can get. And we want to facilitate that so that people shop here. One thing we're doing in that direction is keeping the cost of parking at the Wells Avenue lot low so that employees can park there for 50 cents an hour all day, as opposed to on the street for $1 all day. But another piece of that is that we do have these employee, or they're called local business parking permits. Again, this is something that I haven't started to put in motion any changes, but I welcome your input on what you think is what you would think is a good recommendation to go with this. Just to give you some information, local business permits cost $120 per quarter, which is the equivalent of $2.25 a day. There's very high demand for permits in Watertown Square. 40 permits sell out every quarter, with people waiting online for more. There are all, Wells Avenue lot has very low demand. On average, 5 permits out of 20 which have been allocated for the Wells Avenue lot sell every quarter. They're the same price. But just for whatever reason, and it could be that people don't know about it, or it could just be that it's too far, or it seems too far. We don't know why, but that's a piece of work we have to do, is to figure out why that is. There are also senior permits that allow free parking for $2 per year or $3 for 2 years. And there are roughly 800 active permits at the time. The permits, yeah, 800 was the number that, this was, Shondell Rose gave me a lot of information when we were working on the parking study. And I'm not really proposing that we do anything about that right now, but it's the employee local business parking permits that I'm wondering what you would support. The parking study recommends that we increase the number of parking permits in Watertown Square and designate, right now there is a designated location for them, but it's kind of it's a little, it should be further away, I think, is their point. It should be the farthest parking from Mount Auburn Street. And Wells Ave, I think we need to promote that a little better and talk to people about why they're not using it. So I guess really the question is, would you support increasing the number of employee permit parking spaces, knowing that it will have an impact on the availability of parking in Watertown Square?
Where are they designated to park now?
It's hard for me to describe. It's a row that it's fairly near Tresca's. It's, if you were facing Tresca's, it's to the right of Tresca's and perpendicular.
Well, I know those are very hot demand. And there were some people who didn't even know about the senior rate that like, oh my gosh, I'm paying all this money employee, but I could have just been doing a senior.
Well, I've never heard anybody say that. I hope they don't do that.
Well, so I think, Laura, I think, we talked about, using price to incentivize employees to move out of prime spots, which I think is a good strategy, which this does. And I think adding some more, you're proposing adding 10 more to the Watertown Square area. Is that the number you think is the right number? I mean, I don't know what the right number is, but that's what the recommendation is. So,
but I can't remember in the presentation how heavily, when you guys did the counts, I know it was only a few times with Stantec, what you discovered in Watertown Square.
In Watertown Square, interestingly, the parking lot is more heavily used than on street. Maybe that's because of the traffic on street, but I can give you a minute and I can tell you, yeah, I mean, there are times at 1 p.m. it's 95% occupied, which is very, very high. That's the equivalent of saying there's no vacancy at all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Watertown Square lot is Watertown Square lot and Coolidge Square on street have the highest occupancies.
I mean, it goes hand in hand, right? You want employees and businesses, but also customers. I mean, I'm so desperate for wanting to improve Watertown Square. So I don't know if we had more, no offense, transit experts or parking, like engineers that have a little more knowledge of the balance of, okay, if we increase employee permits, how that affects, like how much detailed study have we really done other than kind of general counts a few times at certain times a day? If that would help inform, my gut reaction is I'm generally in favor of increasing the permits. And I don't know, to Vinny's point, if you don't increase the price, so there's a good incentive to purchase them and it's not too far away. I mean, we're not such a big town, you need a shuttle to, but if there was a shuttle, like, you have senior shuttle, like people could park in one area and say, well, you work here, you can jump on XYZ, but.
Right. Luckily, we don't have to figure that one out.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the study, there's several pages of data, and what it does show is the prime spots, the one that are within a half a block of stores, are often full, but you go a block away, and there's lots of empty spaces that are empty for large parts of the day. So I think the plan would be to use the permits to sort of get those people who are going to be parked there for like 9 hours to go, park the block away.
Put them all on our street instead of the auto dealers taking up all those spots.
Well, that's another story. But yeah, But yeah, I think, and I think that using the parking permit to sort of do that, because that's, you're not putting money in the meter, you're getting it, and the incentive about getting, yeah, I mean, literally the difference between walking a block or half a block, it's like, if you're gonna be there for the full day, it's like, it's sort of a negligible difference. And I think so. I think this is a good strategy to try to do that, because that sort of works to getting people use the underutilized parking spaces more efficiently. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah,
So.
I think Councilor Palumbo, and then I think Steve Magoon had another follow-up as well.
Thank you. I just want to get some more information before I say much. How many, there are 40 permits for employees right now? Is that correct?
Watertown Square,
In Watertown
28
Square?
and Coolidge Square.
Okay, and of the 40 employee permits, most of the parking locations are in the CVS lot, is that correct?
Yes.
And are they scattered around, or are they in one place?
I think they're in one place in that one row.
And you're suggesting that we add 10 more, and why are we suggesting that? What's the rationale for adding 10 more? Is this to be supportive of our employees, or is there another reason?
It is supportive of our employees, but also it keeps them, we can put them where we want to put them rather than them deciding where they want to park. So if we could potentially move the employee parking to a less desirable part of the lot and move those employees there.
But at this point, are you asking for 10 more in the same location? Are you suggesting that there be 10 more in the same location?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I think at this point they are at this, we haven't changed the location, but I think as Laura just said, we need to look at that and do the same thing we're doing with pricing, demand pricing, of trying to encourage people to park in, someplace like Nichols Ave instead of on Mount Auburn Street. Similar thing. We're going to, have these very desirable employee permits for Watertown Square. The next thing we need to do is say, all right, here's the spaces that are less desirable, and that's where you get to use them, not in the place where, where people want to park, where the customers need to park. So I think we need to do those two things hand in hand. And, if you wanted to expand the recommendation to include that, I'd be very supportive.
I think we have.
That would.
Sorry, go ahead, Councilor Palumbo. Yeah.
That would seem to me to make sense if that's the purpose of it, is to so that we could expand the recommendation to see that upon finding less desirable spots, that these 40 plus 10, 50 be put someplace. I actually thought that employees were supposed to start by parking over on White's Avenue. I thought that they were.
That's town hall employees.
Oh, those are just town hall employees. Okay.
Yeah, Tony, this is a different thing. These are like local businesses buy these permits
Oh,
for
right.
For their
Okay.
their own employees, which is separate than the town hall parking, which we have the little placards to hang in the windows.
That's right.
This is something.
So I would suggest that we expand this, per what Steve said, to make it so that there's at least some language in here that talks about moving these special spots to less desirable locations.
Or maybe we should rephrase that as to
Oh,
more underutilized space locations.
right, and remote. One of them.
So I think we have Councilor Feltner, then Councilor Canales have their hands up. So, Councilor Feltner.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I agree with that, because I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yep.
I agree with what's stated, because, we had said we recognize that the prime spots were being used by employees and there are not enough of them. My other thought, though, is that, I can't remember if it's number 4, the payment technology, where we had a big discussion about how to pay, coin, card, by phone, and plate reader. if we had the license reader, I don't know if I'm thinking about this correctly, wouldn't that, or a permit, employee permit, would that also help where you had employees who had odd hours or et cetera, where they could park at the meters and not, so they could use their permit other places and pay? You understand what I'm saying? So there's more flexibility in terms of where to park, because we recognize even if we add 10, it's not going to be enough. Or am I not making sense when it
Not sure.
comes to permits for employees?
Sorry. I don't know what you're asking. What are you asking?
I'm just wondering, because in addition to having the employee permits, is there a way that works with the meters?
I think
permit
when
works with
when the enforcement
technology?
officers come through and they know that that's the employee area, if they see a permit, if they see a permit, they're not going to give that person a ticket.
Okay, that's just that. Okay, and then that's another reason why, I was thinking time limits. But to this point, I agree and endorse giving more spots in a different location.
Okay. Councillor Canellis?
Thank you. Just correct me if I'm wrong, but when the parking permits in Watertown Square were first initiated, wasn't the parking designated parallel to Spring Street?
I don't know. Steve's on mute. He doesn't know either.
I don't know. Not that I know of.
This goes back many years when we had an active chamber, and Denise Pazzaretti actually had, thought of, because she had the photo studio right in Watertown Square, and this is something we had discussed. And I think that's where initially the parking was designated. So
it is kind of parallel to Spring Street.
pardon me?
It is kind of parallel to Spring Street. It's not right next to Spring Street, but it is parallel to Spring Street.
I thought you were talking closer to Tresca's.
It is closer to Tresca's, but isn't that still parallel to Spring Street?
Well, this was very close to Spring Street.
Okay, yeah, and I don't think that's where it is now, but I don't know the history of that at all. I could ask Sergeant Sampson. He seems to be a fountain of history.
Okay, he was not the traffic commander at that point in time. But are you trying to increase the parking in the existing location? Or are you trying to move it to another area?
I think we want to look around and find a better location for it. And by better, I mean more remote and less utilized.
Mm-hmm. And for Nichols Avenue, when those parking permits were initially established, you couldn't even give them away. There was just there were no takers.
Do you have any knowledge about why that is? Is it because people don't know about it, or is it because they don't?
It was too far. It was too far.
That's the thing with changing the directionality, is it makes it feel closer. That's the only reason.
I'm talking about Nichols Avenue, not Wells.
Oh, Nichols Avenue. Yeah, Nichols Avenue is too far. I understand that.
Yes.
But how about Wells though?
Wells also it's too far to walk. If someone were going to go to the post office, it's just not feasible to park in the Wells Avenue parking lot. And if you're going to go over to the hardware store and be carrying something that's heavy, there again, it's just not convenient for folks, and they'll circle the square just to get parking on the street that's going to be convenient.
And I think pricing may help us address that to some extent, because there are some people that would be willing to walk a little bit further if it was cheaper. So, we'll certainly implement that and monitor it and see what impact it has.
Okay. I think if I'm, could I get a motion that we endorse recommendation number 8, emphasizing that we would like employee parking in increased and underutilized locations?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any last comments or questions before we vote? Okay. Seeing none, Councilor Donato,
Yes.
Councilor Palumbo,
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli,
Yes.
Councilor Feltner. I'm going to interpret that as a yes. Great. And myself, yes. Okay, great. So I think all we have left is number 10.
Yes.
Okay.
So number 10 is adjust parking and zoning standards to encourage investment. This is also, I would say, on the to-do list. We have not started to do this yet. But just to elaborate on where I think this is going, and there's actually a sub recommendation in here, but the primary one is that the parking requirements in the business district, where development patterns predated both zoning and the heavy reliance on cars, are not so flexible, and so they inhibit new businesses from coming in. For instance, a retail establishment has a lower parking requirement than a restaurant, which may have little or no parking. I mean, an existing business could have little or no parking, and when that business goes out, a restaurant might not be able to come in because it can't meet the parking requirement in the existing building. So I think that was the main problem that was trying to be addressed by this recommendation, to make it easier for businesses to switch up and be more flexible. And so they were recommending that you actually, that we actually get rid of the parking requirement for retail locations in the two business districts. I think we're like a long way from, really, we need to analyze that quite a bit more and understand better, you know, where that's a problem, where it's not a problem. So just to explain what that recommendation was trying to get at. A sub recommendation within number 10 is to create a parking benefits district. So that is where the town would allocate a portion of the net revenue from the parking meters to a fund that would be just spent in that district, in the business district. I have a little bit of experience with this, and when I was working in Arlington, we created a parking benefits district and allocated $250,000 a year to Arlington Center improvements, and paid for sidewalk replacement. They had these brick sidewalks that were buckling, and so they replaced the sidewalks, they put in planters, they're in the process of redesigning their municipal parking lot, and they paid for sidewalk plows and plowing during the course of the year. So, you know, they created a business group around this fund of money, which got the businesses interested in kind of talking to each other, and it had I think a net very beneficial effect on the business district. Again, we're probably not quite ready to do this. We might want to wait and see how much revenue we do generate from the new meters, but just to to hear if you're interested in that.
So would it be safe to say that the recommendation right now would be no action at this time, requires further study?
Yes.
Councilor Feltner, and then Councilor
No, I
Donato.
was just gonna say, this is directly relates to what I brought up for guideline with residential parking, because I know Somerville did that and the residents could directly benefit then. And I know we're not talking about residential permits, but I'm just tossing it out there. It's the same goal that you know you would realize those benefits. So I love this idea, and I know we have a lot going on. I hope that between the private parking and everything else, that you'll have time to devote to that. Because one of the things I'm curious about is with the zoning changes as well, can we attract more diverse businesses and types of, I'm always hearing from residents, you know, of places to go in the square and what there is to do, whether it's restaurants, etc. And I know pandemic's changing everything, but so anyway, just a plug. Thank you for your work.
Okay. I think Councilor Donato and then Steve McGinn.
I think just the only initial concern I would have about either reducing or eliminating some of the parking requirements in business districts would be if those but residential neighborhoods cars.
Anthony, you're cutting in and out a little.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So I think just an initial concern I have, if we either eliminate or reduce parking in certain of the business districts, is if it then pushes customers into residential neighborhoods. That would just be a concern I would try to keep an eye on when we look into that further.
Steve, I think you had a follow-up too.
Yeah, I just was going to mention something Councilor Feltner mentioned, which is, you know, we're in a pretty unique set of circumstances today. And, you know, I really think it would be prudent of us to not act too quickly on zoning changes and maybe see how things, you know, change over the next 6 months or so, just because things like parking and traffic patterns might change pretty dramatically. And, you know, I think we want to be cognizant of that.
Sure. And Angie, I see your hand raised, but I think that was just from last question.
No, I do.
Oh,
want to-
okay. Sorry.
Thank
Councilor Canales.
No, I really wouldn't want to jump into zoning changes, especially reducing parking requirements. I think that would give businesses a false notion. If in fact it were a restaurant and all of a sudden they were, you know, a gold mine and folks really wanted to come and patronize and there was no place to park. And I think that's a major issue. We have found it in our own daily activities, trying to patronize restaurants or other establishments, whether it be here in Watertown. And if there's no place to park, you're just going to move on and go somewhere else. And that would be a shame to entice someone with zoning changes and tell them, yes, you can come, you don't need the parking. But then once they've made the investment, to find themselves without parking. And I think that's not appropriate to do to a business. I think the incentive should be to increase parking.
Okay. So I guess the motion would be that no, we take no action right now on this item as it will necessitate further study. Could I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay. Seeing none, Councilor Donato,
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli,
Yes.
Councilor Palumba,
yes.
Councilor Feltner,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And I think that's it for the evening, unless Laura, Steve, or Councilor Feltner, if you guys have any last minute questions, concerns, Councilor Picciarelli. So it's not it for the evening. There's going to be a couple more questions.
Well, I said, so I did, so my intention was to do the minutes, to do both August 4th and today in one report. And I just sort of used that sort of bullet point approach. And I just want to make sure that nobody had any changes or corrections to what we did at the first meeting on that. Is everybody okay with that approach?
Yes.
I like the approach. I saw your email come in and I didn't get a chance to read them today because
That's okay.
the meeting started at 5, but.
Yeah, it's pretty, sorry, I meant to have it done yesterday, but
That's okay. I just.
work issues got ahead of me and I just got it's like, damn job.
Yeah. And just if anyone's going to give Vinny any recommendations on the minutes, just make sure you don't reply all. That's it.
Yeah, if you want to just shoot me something.
Yeah.
And then, so Laura, you're going to send me that memo about the grant thing. So I'll include that. And I have Angie's stuff. I'll include that. So.
Councilor Feltner.
Yeah, just a little housekeeping. If we could, I don't think the March, whatever date of this year about implementation it's still not on the parking link website for the planning page, just for public transparency and ease of finding that report, if that could get added. But the last thing is that I guess I just don't remember us actually voting 1 through 4. We were recommended that. And you know, number one was the parking payment technology. And I thought that Laura was going to come back because you were still pursuing potential contracts for pay by phone and what that was going to look like. Because right now we just have one of the three options when it comes to upgrading, and that is new meters to play by coin or credit card.
Right, right. So Lisa, so what I wrote is the third bullet point under number 1. It says we are still negotiating with 2 vendors for pay by phone, and it is likely there will be no additional cost to the town, but staff will advise after negotiations are complete. So that's, you know, so I assume the negotiations are not complete yet, but
Correct.
that is, Laura, you will let us know that we've selected X and there's going to be no charge, or there's going to be X charge. And then
Yeah. I think there won't be any charge except all the charges.
yeah, so there was a few things in there. Yeah, so there was a few things in there that I
Add any more money, which was
questions
I
that
think
have been
what you were
asked.
asking me at the time. I thought Lisa was asking at the time, would there be any additional outlay of funds by the town? And the answer to that is no. There are no additional outlays of funds.
Last time it was yes, but I
just wasn't sure. I wasn't enough into the details yet at that point, but now I am.
that's okay. I just wanted to be sure that we weren't putting to bed number 1, because again, the method of being able to pay and giving up on was it the license plate technology and pay by phone, I think is bad, especially pay by phone. I don't see us successfully rolling out new meters without that technology, especially now with COVID too, and every, you know, touchless, as well as being able, things we talked about, like adding time or not, whether it's, you know, on your phone, if you're disabled, all the benefits of pay by phone. So I'm sorry, Vinny, I didn't see the minutes, and I appreciate that Laura's still investigating that, and I guess it's, you know,
We will have pay by
TBD.
We will have pay by phone. We will.
Okay. Sorry, Steve and Laura, did you guys have an update before that we close the meeting? On anything?
That's everything.
Wow.
All right. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask one question though?
Yeah.
Again, with Steve, I know it's hard because we do things in phases, but the timing, and I know we already we're purchasing the meters, but do you sense that the implementation, if you will, of the rollout, there will be some parking upgrades along with the meter so that people see or feel or enjoy a direct benefit for that experience and for paying for meters, or no, it's going to be much staggered out?
I would say the latter. While we're certainly making some improvements, some things that we talked about tonight, you know, we're hoping to roll out new meters fairly soon, and with new technology and ability to pay by phone as well as pay by credit card, I think it's going to be the primary benefit. You know, parking lot improvements, other types of improvements would be further down the road.
Sorry, Councilor Palumbo.
Yeah, just real quickly, also on number 1, there was a note that the staff is still checking out motion sensors, which is the bottom bullet that Vinny included, to prevent feeding of the meter. Is that something that you're also still looking into and you're going to get back to us about? Is that a yes? Is good.
Yeah. Let me talk to Steve about that tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
say
you won't be
yes.
I have
great.
a little bit of information about that, but I don't,
You won't be
Okay,
really,
thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
well, before, just one second, but to Tony's point, Laura, maybe if you could just, those 2 questions about, you know, is there additional costs for the pay by phone and the motion sensor, if you could just maybe shoot me an email, I'll attach that to the minutes so to the report, so that anybody reading it will actually, the last page will be that explanation. I think that'll solve the problem for that both Lisa and Tony raised.
That'll work.
And the second one was motion sensors.
Yeah. So Laura, go through just go through it when you get a chance in the next day or so, and just and if you have any questions, just give me a call.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
So, we talk about the employees of the businesses. Is there, employees, there's often shortage of parking at Town Hall. Are there other potential places for employees at Town Hall that are going to be there all day that are, not super far, but I don't know. I guess it's sensitive to say another side street because that would be residential, but I just toss that out there. It's often no spaces available at Town Hall. We don't really enforce the evening, and you have all the people using the park, and of course we're Zooming, but especially when we have earlier meetings, there's nowhere to park for, ideally I'd ride my bike, but in the winter I do drive. So I just toss that out there, but we haven't discussed that.
Well, and you raised two different issues. One is, employee parking. Most of the employees are gone by an evening meeting. So if you're having trouble finding parking for an evening meeting, that's people using the park, not the employees. We have had employee parking on White's Ave, and there is still additional spaces there that could be utilized. So I would think we need to fully utilize that before we had employees park somewhere else. The Town Hall parking lot after hours and the library parking lot after hours wasn't really something that we had addressed in the recommendations. So, and that hasn't been identified really as a problem, but if that is a problem, we should consider it.
Definitely a problem for community meetings, just saying.
Sorry, Councilor Canellis.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on that, I had brought this up briefly in just conversation during the summer months when the town hall is open on Tuesday evenings until 7 p.m. And now our meetings are starting at 7, which means we need to arrive prior to, or if there's an executive session, then there is absolutely no parking for us to arrive at that particular hour and get in. And if there's any other activity going on, then there's no parking on Main Street or anywhere else. So we have an issue just for us 9 coming into Town Hall at that hour. And it has been an issue during the summer because of the use of the park as well.
That's something I think we can take up on a separate time, probably. I don't think it's...
No, but I think fine to bring it out here in an open venue. I think it's important for everyone to know as opposed to sidebar conversations, which is what some of us have been doing.
Yeah.
So Steve is making note, I think.
Sure. Are there any other comments specifically related to the parking management plan?
Are the new parking meters going to feed us?
Or you're going to feed them.
Tony, I think you were inclined to make a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay. Councilor Donato.
Yes.
Councilor Picciarelli.
Yes.
Councilor Palumbo.
Yes.
Councilor Feltner.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay. Thank you.